Got about 8 of these guys that I want to highlight here, starting with the prize jewel of the offensive tackle class, and that is Ronnie Stanley. Who is going to get Ronnie Stanley? Is he going to go back to the Baltimore Ravens, or is he going to get a lengthy contract somewhere else? Cam Robinson's next, Tyron Smith, Alaric Jackson, Dan Moore Jr., Morgan Moses, Jedrick Wills, Kelvin Beachum. Who are we talking about here in this group, Dalton?
So for me, I think Ronnie Stanley, like you mentioned, I think for a contending team, obviously he could stay with the Ravens. We've talked about Kansas City as a potential fit right there. I think for a contending team to give him probably a 2-year contract obviously would be a great move. But the guy that I'm most fascinated with is actually Alaric Jackson from the Rams, because he's the one guy among this group that I feel like I would be comfortable giving him a 4 or 5 year contract, knowing he's only going to be 27 years old next season. And he really had a breakout, especially in the second half of this year. If you look at what he did down the stretch, week 9 through the divisional round, the 7th best left tackle in football, the 4th best run blocking grade, 12th best pass blocking grade. Trevor, he was the only left tackle in that stretch, week 9 through the divisional round, to have at least 400 pass blocking snaps and only 1 or fewer sacks allowed. Okay, I think you're getting a young kid who had a breakout this year, and if there's a team that needs an offensive tackle and they want a younger one, let's say I'm thinking about somebody like the Washington Commanders or even the New England Patriots, right? Maybe if you don't force yourself into taking an offensive lineman at 4th overall, right, by signing Alaric Jackson, then you can attack at receiver. You could take Travis Hunter. You could take something like that in the skill positions, and they probably need to make multiple offensive line signings anyway, but I feel like this is the one guy among this group who could actually be a long-term cornerstone for somebody because he's so young and he's had such a recent breakout and he's really developed during his time with the Rams. So Jackson actually fascinates me more than anybody. I think he's going to be a really good addition to somebody's offensive line, and his development in LA is the reason why.
Yeah, I think that the New England Patriots are a great call out for him. This is a team that's got a lot of money to spend in free agency, and that's the chances that you want to take, right? If there's a guy who's hitting free agency and he can help out the offensive line, that's what you want, because we do a lot of mock drafts, obviously, here on this channel and at PFF, and a lot of times when we get to the Patriots at 4, it's so hard for me to not give them Will Campbell or whoever you think the top offensive tackle is, Armand Membu, Kelvin Banks Jr., whatever. It's so hard to not draft an offensive lineman at 4 because the need is so dire. This was the worst offensive line in the NFL last year. And until free agency comes around and they get some new names along that offensive line, you almost feel like you can. Even if Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter were available in the mock draft simulation, you almost feel like you can't. And that's what free agency is. You've got to be able to upgrade that position, the trenches specifically, to where you're not hamstrung into drafting a guy that maybe is a little bit lower on your board versus somebody who is still on the board. So love the Alaric Jackson call out there. Very curious about Morgan Moses. I just don't think that it was great in New York no matter what, but he is a veteran who's played a long time in this league. He's had a lot of success in this league. I wonder if a team like the New Orleans Saints, for example. Okay, you could sign Morgan Moses to a 1-year deal. You can kick Trevor Penning inside and see how he plays at guard for a full season if you don't believe he's a long-term offensive tackle option for you, because his rookie contract is coming to the end here. You've got Talise Fuanga now playing left, so I think that could allow them to have some flexibility there. I'll look at the Tennessee Titans, right? That's another team where they're picking at the very top of the draft, but could they trade down? It gives them flexibility if they moved J.C. Latham over to the left side, and he's playing next to Peter Skoronski. They've got Lloyd Cushenberry as well at the center spot, so that left side of the offensive line's all right. But bring in Morgan Moses to be a little bit of a floor upgrade over Nicholas Petit-Frere at that right tackle spot. That could give them flexibility to do what they want in the draft. So that's the spot that I could also see a guy like Morgan Moses going. I feel like he's still got some steadiness to his game, but you mentioned the offensive tackle class is kind of going to go as Ronnie Stanley goes, but those are a couple of guys that we also are intrigued about in the group. On the interior offensive line, got about 10 guys that we're naming here. Drew Dahlman is one of them for the Atlanta Falcons. Ryan Kelly from the Colts. Coleman Shelton from the Bears. Trey Smith is the crown jewel, if you will, in this group from the Chiefs. Will Fries, who's very intriguing, dominant season before he got hurt this past year. And then you got guys like Tevin Jenkins, Kevin Zeitler, James Daniels, who very small sample size last year, but was playing really great in Pittsburgh before he got hurt. Mekhi Becton coming off that Super Bowl win now as a guard and not a tackle. Brandon Scherf from the Jags. Talk to me about this group. Who do you want to point out here?
Look, I think a guy that needs to get more hype and is going to get more hype once the market starts moving is Drew Dalton, the center from the Falcons. And if you're talking about running one of these Shanahan outside zone sort of schemes, you couldn't ask for much more out of a center than you get out of Dalton. He was the 5th best center in football this past season, 6th in run blocking grade. And you look at that system, again, mostly under Arthur Smith and even this year under Zach Robinson, you look at the outside zone run blocking, 94.3 grade in that area, right? Over the last 2 years, only 3 offensive linemen at any position have been better than that, and that's Frank Ragnow, Trent Williams, and his teammate Chris Lindstrom. When you're talking about names like that, that's the level you're getting on with the run blocking. He's also at least a solid pass protector. I think you're talking about San Francisco, talking about the Chicago Bears. I think there's multiple teams that are going to be in on Drew Dalton, and he's going to make more money than you think. He's a top-notch center, and especially in a system like that, I think he's going to help a team a lot. I actually think as much as Trey Smith has been talked about in Chicago, I think they should be just as in on Drew Dalton at that center spot to really lock up that run game, and then they can figure out what comes behind it at running back later. But we know they have to fix the interior. That might be the first guy that I call if I'm Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, that Atlanta offensive line has whooped ass the last 2 years. And, Dalton is a reason why we saw so much success from them. I'm so intrigued about Will Fries. I really am. Like, I wonder if he is somebody who the Washington Commanders would take a chance on, right? With Sam Cosmi's injury, and you go bring him in, and you have a little bit more flexibility along the offensive line. I thought he played fantastic in Indianapolis this year before he got hurt. And so he's the guy who I'm really intrigued on because, of course, like Trey Smith is going to sign for a lot of money. Do you have a favorite Trey Smith landing spot? I mean, the New England Patriots obviously make a lot of sense for him. We talked about how bad that offensive line is. Maybe Tennessee as well, if you wanted to put him at that right guard spot. I'm trying to think of it. I guess Chicago, right? If they're losing all 3 of their starting interior offensive linemen, it probably makes a lot of sense for you to go make a splash and try to get somebody who's going to be a major difference maker because you like those tackles there. Those are a couple that come to my mind. Any specific landing spots with Trey Smith that you like outside of Kansas City, of course?
I think Chicago is certainly one. I'll tell you, I'll throw another one too because I believe both their starting guards are free agents. I think the Arizona Cardinals would make a lot of sense too, with as much as they want to run the football, and we know Trey Smith is solid all the way around. I think the Cardinals would be another one that would look at him at the right guard spot, and then maybe they figure out a right tackle situation in the draft while still fixing their defense. So I think the Cardinals are one I would throw in along with you. But I think any of these interior groups, first of all, tell me if I'm wrong, I think this is the deepest group of any of these that we're talking about in free agency. So you have a lot of options, and I do think the Chicago Bears are the most interesting to see which ones they buy in on and how expensive they get.
I think there's just a lot of hope. Right? I mean, it's not a guarantee that all these guys are going to work out, but certainly Trey Smith and how he has played over the last couple of years. Kevin Zeitler's been great on that Detroit offensive line. So, like, he's a little bit older, but maybe you're signing a guy who you feel like is going to be a solid starter for you. You mentioned how great Drew Dalton is, Ryan Kelly as well, and everything that he's been able to do with the Colts. And then you got guys like, again, Will Fries, James Daniels, Tevin Jenkins, in particular, these guys that you could go, we think we can get a lot out of this player. We might be able to get him at a little bit of a bargain, either because of injury or just the timing of when they're hitting free agency. Mekhi Becton, I'm very curious at how much he gets when he gets to the open market. So there's a lot of names on this list on the interior that you could see being starting caliber guys elsewhere, which makes it very valuable for a team like the Minnesota Vikings, who need help along the interior offensive line, the Houston Texans, who need help on their interior offensive line. Are they going to make a big splash for one of these guys? I wonder if Fries could also be a really good addition, or James Daniels could be a really good addition for the Minnesota Vikings. I wonder if that's a pairing. And some teams that could go after those guys. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.